Tomorrow is President's Day, and in that spirit, let's take a moment to replay the iconic moment from President John F. Kennedy's 1961 inaugural speech.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Oh, how times have changed. Now things look a little different for those in top posts in the Trump administration. You know, those aides who champion sweeping budget cuts for the world's poorest while they enjoy the privileges and perks of taxpayer-funded positions. Reuters, citing documents, is reporting that a permanent security detail for Trump's budget chief, Russell Vought, is being paid for with the remains of USAID operating expenses, the organization that Vought helped dismantle. Though usually the OMB director doesn't require the same security detail as a national security aide overseeing, say, a campaign to attack ISIS. Now $15 million of your tax dollars are being spent protecting the Project 2025 architect through the end of the year. And we're learning that the minimum cost of $1 million for 1 million donors giving the money to a group raising funds for events and projects in honor of America's 250th anniversary can gain access to Trump himself. The New York Times notes the detailed breakdowns of packages for donors indicate that those who give 1 million or more will get invitations to a private Freedom 250 thank you reception hosted by Mr. Trump with a historic photo opportunity. Those who give 2.5 million or more also are being offered speaking roles at an event in Washington on July 4th. Joining us now to break it all down is MS Now political analyst and senior executive editor for Bloomberg Opinion, Tim O'Brien. He's the author of Trump Nation, The Art of Being Donald. So, Tim, the nation's 250th anniversary.
Right.
I mean, I guess we should have expected this,
yes.
But even for Donald Trump, isn't this a bit much?
I don't think it is. I think it's in course with who he's been for about 60 years. And I think, you know, given what we're confronting now, like how easily they grift, the idea that ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country is a given way to I'm getting mine, I'm going to get it as quickly as I can, which is what everyone in that administration is doing. Where are we? Where is the Republican Party? Where are institutions? Where is the rule of law around all this? So some stops are being put in place. And I think this has happened so frequently with Trump. And the ante gets bigger, but what he's doing doesn't change. He's selling the office. He's selling access to the office. He's essentially turned the White House into a Walmart. And where are the stops?
It seems to be like so constant, so diffuse. It's like lawmakers actually struggle to wrap their minds around every single piece of it and to have a coherent message or to focus on one element of it. I mean, like for a while, like the ballroom, I guess, sort of became a symbol of some of this, and it gave people something to latch on to. But it is almost like impressive might not be the right word, but it is like that they've thought to monetize things that I just could never even think of monetizing.
They got to steal everything that's not nailed down. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Because you have a moral core. and that's the difference. They're craven. And the party's afraid of him. They're cowards. This is bribery or grift or influence peddling, whatever kind of terminology you want to use for it. And it's not just that Trump's lining his pockets, that he's also selling out the national interests along the way. And he's degrading the stature of the office he inhabits.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a partisan or ideological observation. It is just about bad government, and it's about the corruption of the federal government under his auspices.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you more about what other parties are getting in exchange for their donations or whatever, you know, investments. That's probably the more appropriate term here. For example, I know Forbes reported earlier this week, I believe it was, that the founder of Binance was pardoned last year, CZ, and just coincidentally, Binance now holds 87% of Trump's stablecoin. In that case, at least we kind of like maybe know what the quid and the quo are. You get, you buy the stablecoin, you get a pardon, easy peasy. You've written about another sort of suspicious exchange with the UAE getting access to chips. What are other examples that may be troubling to viewers about what this president is giving up in exchange for donations or investments?
Well, the UAE investment in Trump's and the Trump family's Bitcoin operation should trouble everyone because, again, it's not just about Trump lining his pockets. The Biden administration had limited the export of high-end chips to the UAE because they were worried about it being a transit point to China, which affects two things: U.S. economic competitiveness, AI, technological development, and also U.S. national security. Those chips are fundamental to military operations. Within about 3 weeks of Trump getting inaugurated, he lifted that ban. And we now know that a few days before he was inaugurated, a very influential Emirati invested about $500 million in the Trump enterprises, of which about $187 million came into the Trump family coffers. So when the Republicans are wringing their hands over Hunter Biden's laptop, that is like an echo on a distant planet compared to the stuff that Trump is doing. He's on the front lawn of the White House, raking up piles of money as if they were autumn leaves, taking them into the White House and putting them in a big bag and exchanging U.S. foreign policy, national security, and the interests of average voters for money.
Yeah, that's an incredible visual that you just painted for us there.
I think that's what's significant about it. It's not just that it's abhorrent that they are lining their own pockets. It's how are they sacrificing the national interest?
Who are they selling out?
And who are they selling out? Exactly.
Because I spoke last week with the tech executive who said that basically his view was it's completely inevitable that those chips are going to be in China's hands now, which we're in the AI arms race. And so to give that advantage, which you could argue that the technology is advancing so quickly, they're going to get it anywhere, they're going to get it on the black market, but it just doesn't make that much sense at a time when our relations are so fraught with China and we're trying to keep our advantage. Why cede the advantage?
Well, I mean, I think the technology leaders are happy to say it will get there anyway because they're making a lot of money off those sales. And if they themselves don't believe there's anything beyond their own bottom line about where those chips land, and that they as business leaders also have a stake in U.S. stability, U.S. national security, U.S. economic competitiveness vis-a-vis China or any other country, they're not actually speaking as members of a community. They're speaking as self-interested individuals, also trying to maximize their profits at the expense of the U.S. national interest.
If you had the ear of lawmakers and could convince them to zero in on something right now, to focus on just one part of this web, what would you tell them to do?
Well, and Tony, the tricky thing is you'd say, let's make sure the SEC, the FBI, the DOJ, and the State Department are examining all these things. But of course, they're also under Donald Trump's control. So they're not going to do it. You could ask the Republican Party to pass stricter laws so the executive branch is subject to the same kind of ethics rules that everyone else in the federal government is, because the presidency currently isn't. But they're not going to do that. So I think at this point we have to wait for the midterms and hope that some gumption comes back into the congressional wheels so someone stands up against this, because otherwise it's just going to continue.
My feeling is even if they passed another law, who's going to enforce the law?
Exactly.
Right? So,
I mean, that's what's so unique about this here. Todd Blanche a few weeks ago said in questions about all these deals, he said there's nothing untoward or unprecedented about what Donald Trump is doing. But that's raw propaganda. It is wildly untoward and it is absolutely unprecedented. The founding fathers would be spinning in their graves watching the way that he's just hung a shingle on the Oval Office.
Tim O'Brien, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your great reporting.
Thank you.